The red warning lights cast an eerie glow across the underground command center as the alien message finished playing for the third time. Admiral Stone rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the table at the other members of the Terran Defense Council. Everyone wore the same expression of disbelief mixed with suspicion. "Play it again," ordered General Rivers, his voice rough from 3 days of emergency meetings. The holographic display flickered to life once more, showing the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Thek of the Kethran Empire. The alien's chitinous form clicked and hissed as the universal translator converted his words into English. "People of Earth, the Kethran Empire offers you peace. We have grown weary of this conflict and wish to end the bloodshed between our species. We propose a treaty that will benefit both our civilizations." Dr. Morgan shifted in her seat, her fingers drumming nervously on the metal table. She had spent years studying Kethran biology and behavior, and nothing about this message felt right. The Kethrans had never shown mercy before, not even when humanity had dealt them crushing defeats at the Battle of Europa and the Siege of Mars Station. "The terms are generous," continued Thek's recorded message. "Complete cessation of hostilities, territorial concessions in the outer systems, and most importantly, an exchange of technology that will advance both our species. We ask only for mutual trust and transparency." Stone paused the recording and turned to his intelligence chief, Colonel Park. "What do your people make of this?" Park pulled up a series of documents on her tablet. "Sir, our analysts have been working around the clock. The surface terms look incredible. They're offering us hyperdrive technology, advanced medical treatments, and energy weapons that could revolutionize our defense capabilities." "But," Stone prompted, knowing there had to be more. "But buried in the technical specifications are requirements that make no sense for a peace treaty. They want us to power down our orbital defense platforms for inspection. They want our military production facilities moved to specific coordinates in remote locations. They want detailed maps of our underground bunkers and emergency shelters." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Everyone around the table had fought the Kethrans for 3 brutal years. They knew how the aliens operated. They were methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless when it came to eliminating threats. Dr. Morgan leaned forward. "I've been studying their language patterns in this message. The Kethrans use different vocal tones when they're being truthful versus when they're deceiving. The entire section about technology sharing shows stress markers consistent with deception." "General," Rivers slammed his fist on the table, "it's a trap. They want us to disable our defenses and move our forces into kill zones. Then they'll strike when we're vulnerable." "The question is," Stone said quietly, "what do we do about it?" The debate that followed was intense. Some council members wanted to reject the treaty outright and prepare for continued warfare. Others suggested accepting parts of it while maintaining defensive positions. But Stone found himself thinking about something else entirely. He pulled up a tactical display showing current Kethran fleet positions. Their ships were scattered across dozens of star systems, protecting their supply lines and maintaining blockades around human colonies. It was a defensive formation that made sense for a long-term conflict. What if we give them exactly what they want? Stone asked suddenly. The room went quiet. Colonel Park looked at him with concern. "Sir, you can't be serious." "If we follow their instructions, they'll destroy us, will they?" Stone stood up and walked to the main display. "Think about it. Right now, their fleet is spread out across half the galaxy. They have to maintain long supply lines and protect multiple positions simultaneously. But if they think we're going to surrender, what will they do?" Dr. Morgan caught on first. "They'll consolidate their forces, bring their scattered fleets together for a coordinated strike." "Exactly. And when they do that, they'll be vulnerable in a way they've never been before." Stone turned back to the council. "We've been fighting a defensive war for 3 years. We've learned their tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns. They think they know us, but they don't understand human nature." General Rivers was already nodding. "They expect us to be desperate enough to accept any deal. They think we're naive." "So we let them think that," Stone said. We sign their treaty. We follow their instructions. We give them every indication that we're complying with their trap. And while they're moving their forces into position for what they think will be our execution, we prepare a surprise of our own. The plan that emerged over the next several hours was audacious in its scope. Every disabled defense platform would be secretly retrofitted with new weapons. Every relocated military base would actually be positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Every technology exchange would be subtly modified to include hidden vulnerabilities. Colonel Park raised an important concern. The civilian population won't understand. They'll think we're surrendering. There could be riots, panic, complete breakdown of morale. That's a risk we'll have to take, Stone replied. If word gets out about our real plan, the Kethrans will detect the deception. We need their spy networks to report exactly what they expect to see. Dr. Morgan was already working on the technical aspects. I can modify the technology transfers to include subtle flaws that won't be detected immediately. It will take their engineers weeks to discover the problems, and by then it will be too late. The meeting continued through the night as they refined the details. Every aspect of the fake surrender had to be perfect. The Kethrans were intelligent and observant. A single mistake could expose the entire operation. As dawn broke over the ruined cityscape above their bunker, Stone made the final decision. We do it. We sign their treaty, follow their instructions, and give them the trap they're expecting. But we turn it into our trap instead. The message went out 6 hours later. Ambassador Lee, speaking on behalf of all humanity, accepted the Kethran peace proposal. The aliens responded with what seemed like satisfaction, immediately beginning to coordinate the complex logistics of the treaty implementation. In the days that followed, the world watched in horror as their defenses were systematically dismantled. News reports showed defense satellites powering down, military bases being abandoned, and government officials speaking hopefully about a new era of peace. But in hidden facilities around the globe, the real work was just beginning. Humanity had accepted the Kethran trap, but they were about to discover that humans had been setting traps for each other for thousands of years. The species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and countless disasters was not going to be easily destroyed by alien deception. The Kethrans thought they were watching humanity surrender. In reality, they were about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The ceremony aboard the Kethran flagship took place in a massive chamber that smelled of alien chemicals and recycled air. Ambassador Lee walked slowly down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing off the metal walls as hundreds of Kethran warriors watched from raised platforms. The aliens clicked and hissed among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting the harsh blue lighting. Supreme Commander Thek waited at the far end of the chamber, his towering form draped in ceremonial armor that gleamed like black oil. Beside him stood a table holding the peace treaty, its pages covered in both human text and the intricate symbols of the Kethran language. Ambassador Lee of Earth, Thek's voice boomed through the translation system. You come to end the suffering of your people. This is wisdom. Lee nodded respectfully, though her stomach churned at the alien's condescending tone. She had volunteered for this mission knowing it might be the last thing she ever did. If the Kethran suspected the truth, she would never leave this ship alive. The Kethran Empire welcomes peace, she replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Humanity is grateful for your generous terms. The signing process took nearly 2 hours as both sides read through every clause and subsection. Lee had memorized the hidden meanings behind each requirement, understanding exactly how the aliens planned to use them. When she finally placed her signature on the document, she felt like she was signing humanity's death warrant. Your compliance will be remembered favorably in the histories, Thek said, his mandibles spreading wide in what passed for a smile among his species. The galaxy will know that Earth chose wisdom over futile resistance. Back on Earth, the news of the signed treaty spread like wildfire. In major cities around the world, crowds gathered to watch the broadcasts with expressions of hope and fear. Some celebrated the end of the war, While others suspected they were witnessing humanity's surrender, Tom Bradley stood in Times Square, watching the giant screens show images of the signing ceremony. His brother had died defending the lunar colonies, and the sight of a human ambassador bowing to alien demands filled him with rage. Around him, other people were shouting similar sentiments. "This is surrender," someone yelled. "They're giving up without a fight." The protests began within hours. In London, angry crowds surrounded government buildings demanding answers. In Tokyo, students marched through the streets carrying signs that read, "No peace without victory." In Berlin, a group of military veterans burned an effigy of Ambassador Lee, but the most disturbing scenes for ordinary citizens were the ones showing their defenses being dismantled. News cameras captured the moment when the orbital defense platforms around Earth began powering down, their energy signatures fading from tracking screens. The massive guns that had held off Catherine attacks for 3 years went silent one by one. Colonel Park oversaw the deactivation of the Luna-based defense grid, making sure the Catherine observers noted every detail. The aliens had insisted on watching the process to ensure compliance, and she had to resist the urge to smile as they recorded the shutdown procedures. "All systems offline," she reported to the watching Catherines. "Defense grid is now completely inactive." What the aliens didn't see were the teams of engineers working in hidden compartments throughout the base. Every platform being disabled was actually being retrofitted with new components that would make them far more dangerous than before. The modifications were invisible to standard sensors. Hidden within the existing structure, on Earth, similar work was happening at hundreds of locations. The Catherines had demanded that military production facilities be moved to specific coordinates, claiming it was necessary for monitoring compliance. The aliens had chosen remote locations with natural barriers that would make escape impossible. During an attack, General Rivers personally supervised the evacuation of the Colorado Springs manufacturing complex. Convoy after convoy of trucks carried equipment and personnel toward the new location in a narrow valley surrounded by mountains. The Catherines watched from orbital observation posts, no doubt pleased to see humanity walking into their trap, but the trucks carried more than just manufacturing equipment. Hidden among the legitimate cargo were weapons, supplies, and the components for a massive surprise. The valley that was supposed to be a death trap was being turned into a fortress. The most delicate part of the operation was the technology exchange. The Catherines had provided detailed specifications for their hyperdrive systems, medical equipment, and energy weapons. In return, they wanted complete information about human defensive systems, weapon capabilities, and strategic resources. Dr. Morgan worked 18-hour days in a secure laboratory, carefully modifying the information before it was transmitted to the aliens. Every technical manual was altered in subtle ways. Every blueprint contained hidden flaws that would take weeks to discover. Every system specification included vulnerabilities that could be exploited at the right moment. "The modifications are invisible to their initial scans," she explained to Admiral Stone during one of their secret meetings. "They'll install our technology into their ships and weapons without realizing we've given them a way to shut everything down." The hardest part was maintaining the deception among their own people. News reports showed military leaders speaking hopefully about the peace process while secretly coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Politicians made speeches about cooperation and trust while authorizing the construction of hidden weapons facilities. Ambassador Lee returned to Earth 3 weeks after the signing, her public statements full of optimism about the future. In private briefings, she provided detailed intelligence about Catherine ship layouts, security procedures, and command structures. The aliens had been so confident in their trap that they had allowed her to observe far more than they should have. "They're already moving their scattered fleets toward Earth," she reported. "Vec believes the final attack will happen in 6 months, giving them time to position their forces and verify our compliance." The timeline was tight, but humanity had advantages the Catherines didn't expect. 3 years of warfare had taught them to work with desperate efficiency. More importantly, they were fighting for survival in a way that the aliens couldn't fully understand. In secret facilities around the globe, the real preparations continued. Every disabled defense platform was being upgraded with technology reverse-engineered from Catherine systems. Every relocated military base was being connected to a network of hidden communications and supply lines. Every citizen who had protested the treaty was unknowingly providing cover for the largest deception in human history. The Catherines monitored it all, their sensors recording what they thought was humanity's willing cooperation in their own destruction. They saw weapons being decommissioned, fleets being dispersed, and defensive positions being abandoned. What they didn't see was the trap closing around them. As the months passed, more Catherine ships arrived in human space under the guise of peacekeeping forces. Each wave brought additional firepower closer to Earth's major population centers. The aliens were following their own plan perfectly. Concentrating their scattered forces for maximum impact, Stone watched the enemy build up from his command center, counting ships and calculating firing solutions. The Catherines had made their first mistake by underestimating human intelligence. They were about to make their second by assuming that a species capable of surviving on a hostile planet for millions of years would be easy to destroy. The trap was almost ready. Soon, the aliens would discover that humans were most dangerous when they appeared to be at their most vulnerable. The attack began at exactly 0600 hours on a Tuesday morning, when most of Earth's population was still asleep. In the darkness of space above the planet, dozens of Catherine warships powered up their main weapons and began targeting the locations where human defenses should have been. The aliens had planned this moment for months, positioning their forces with mathematical precision around every major city and military installation. Supreme Commander Thek stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 6 months of careful preparation had brought the scattered Catherine fleet together in perfect formation. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be for maximum destruction. The humans had followed their treaty obligations completely, disabling their defenses and moving their forces into vulnerable positions. "Begin the bombardment," Thek commanded, his voice filled with the confidence of certain victory. The first plasma bolts lanced down from orbit like spears of blue fire, streaking toward the coordinates of former human defense installations. The aliens had memorized every target during the long months of treaty compliance monitoring. They knew exactly where to hit to cripple Earth's ability to resist, but something was wrong. The energy signatures on Thek's sensors showed the plasma bolts striking their targets, but there were no secondary explosions, no debris fields, no signs of the massive destruction that should have resulted from hitting military installations. "War Leader Grix," Thek called to his second-in-command, "report on the first strike results." Grix's chitinous form clicked nervously as he studied his instruments. "Supreme Commander, the weapons are functioning normally, but the targets appear to be generating their own energy shields. This should not be possible according to our intelligence." On the main display, the tactical readout showed something that made Thek's compound eyes widen in shock. The human installations that were supposed to be empty and defenseless were suddenly blazing with energy signatures. Defense platforms that had been dark for months were powering up with weapon systems far more advanced than anything the Catherines had seen before. Down on Earth's surface, Admiral Stone watched from the restored command center as his trap unfolded perfectly. The Catherine fleet had positioned itself exactly where human strategists had predicted, concentrated in neat formations that made them vulnerable to coordinated counterattack. "All defense platforms are online," reported Captain Ward from the tactical station. "Enemy forces are at maximum concentration. We have clear firing solutions on every target." Stone nodded grimly. "Execute Operation Reversal. All units, commence firing." The hidden modifications to Earth's defense network activated simultaneously. Platforms that had appeared disabled for months revealed themselves as the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. The technology the Catherines had provided during the treaty negotiations had been reverse-engineered and improved, creating energy weapons that could punch through alien shields like paper. The first human counterattack caught the Kethran fleet completely off guard. Plasma beams erupted from dozens of concealed positions, creating interlocking fields of fire that trapped the alien ships in a deadly crossfire. The careful formations that had been perfect for attacking a defenseless planet became death traps when the planet fought back. Vec watched in horror as his flagship shuddered under direct hits from 3 different directions. The bridge lights flickered and alarms began wailing as hull breaches opened along the ship's length. Around him, his command staff scrambled to reorganize their scattered forces, but every maneuver they attempted seemed to move them into an even worse position. How is this possible? Vec demanded. Our intelligence showed all human defenses were dismantled. War leader Grix was frantically working his instruments. Supreme Commander, our weapon systems are malfunctioning. The targeting computers are showing friendly ships as enemies. The navigation systems are providing incorrect coordinates. It's as if our own technology is working against us. The truth was exactly that. Dr. Morgan's modifications to the shared technology had been dormant for months, waiting for the right moment to activate. Every system the Kethrans had upgraded using human specifications now contained hidden vulnerabilities that could be exploited remotely on the lunar surface. Colonel Park coordinated the activation of the hidden weapons network. The installations that had been relocated according to treaty requirements were revealed as carefully positioned artillery batteries with overlapping fields of fire. Every site the aliens had chosen as a death trap for humans had been turned into a fortress. Luna base to all units, Park transmitted. Target the command ships first. We need to disrupt their coordination before they can reorganize. The response was immediate and devastating. Weapons that had been disguised as mining equipment and construction tools revealed themselves as military hardware. The Kethrans had been so focused on the treaty compliance that they had failed to notice the massive military buildup happening right in front of them. In the asteroid belt, human ships emerged from hiding places among the rocks. These weren't the outdated vessels the Kethrans expected, but new designs incorporating alien technology that had been improved with human engineering. The same hyperdrive systems the aliens had provided were now being used to attack their own fleet. The Battle of Earth's orbit became a masterpiece of human tactical planning. Every element of the Kethran attack had been anticipated and countered. When alien reinforcements jumped into the system, they found human ships waiting at every emergence point. When the enemy tried to retreat, they discovered that the safe corridors they had mapped were filled with hidden minefields. Supreme Commander Thek finally understood what had happened as his flagship systems continued to fail around him. The humans had never intended to surrender. They had used the peace treaty as a weapon, turning every advantage the Kethrans thought they possessed into a vulnerability. They knew, he said to himself, watching his fleet being systematically destroyed. From the beginning, they knew. The realization came too late. The Kethran Empire had concentrated its forces for what they thought would be a quick victory. Instead, they had delivered their entire fleet into the most elaborate trap in galactic history. The humans had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, and it showed in every aspect of their counterattack. General Rivers coordinated the ground assault as hidden human forces emerged from concealed positions across Earth's surface. The Kethrans had never bothered to secure proper landing zones, assuming they would be conducting an orbital bombardment against a helpless planet. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had been planning this battle for months. The modified technology that Dr. Morgan had created proved devastating in ways the aliens couldn't have imagined. Their own weapons turned against them. Their communications networks fed them false information, and their navigation systems led them into carefully prepared killing zones. As the battle raged across Earth's orbital space, one thing became clear to both sides. The humans had not only survived the Kethran trap, but had turned it into their own weapon. The species that had seemed desperate enough to accept any peace deal had revealed themselves as the most dangerous opponents the aliens had ever faced. The war was about to take a very different turn. And for the first time in the conflict, the Kethrans were the ones fighting for survival. The massive Kethran dreadnought Vorthak burned against the star-filled void as human weapons tore through its hull plating. Inside the ship's command center, Supreme Commander Thek gripped his command throne while the deck shuddered beneath his feet. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the vessel as damage reports flooded in from every section. "Hull breach on Deck 12, reported his damage control officer. "Life support failing in sections 4 through 7. Main engines are operating at 30% capacity." Thek's compound eyes focused on the tactical display, trying to make sense of the disaster unfolding around his fleet. 3 hours ago, he had commanded over 200 vessels in perfect formation for the destruction of Earth. Now less than half remained operational, and those were scattered across the solar system in desperate attempts to escape the human trap. Where did they get these weapons? He demanded, watching another of his cruisers explode under concentrated fire from hidden human positions. "Our intelligence showed they had nothing capable of this level of destruction." War Leader Grix worked frantically at his station, trying to re-establish communication with the scattered fleet elements. "Supreme Commander, our own systems are compromised. The technology we shared with them during the treaty negotiations has been turned against us. They're using our own weapons, too. Coordinate attacks on our positions." The truth was even worse than Grix realized. Every piece of Kethran technology that had been exchanged during the peace negotiations had been carefully studied, reverse-engineered, and improved by human scientists. The aliens had essentially provided humanity with the blueprints for their own destruction on Earth's surface. General Rivers coordinated the ground assault from a command post that had been disguised as a mining facility. The location was one of many that the Kethrans had insisted be moved to remote coordinates for easier monitoring. Instead of creating vulnerable targets, the relocations had positioned human forces in perfect positions to support the orbital battle. "All ground units, commence Phase 2, Rivers ordered into his headset. "Target the landing zones and prevent any Kethran ground forces from establishing defensive positions." The response was immediate. Weapons that had been hidden for months emerged from concealed positions throughout the relocated bases. Artillery pieces that had been disguised as industrial equipment began firing on the few Kethran shuttles that had managed to reach the surface. The aliens found themselves under attack from directions they hadn't even known existed. In the asteroid belt, Captain Ward led a squadron of human ships against a group of Kethran vessels trying to escape toward the outer system. The human ships were built using technology that had been shared during the treaty negotiations, but with improvements that made them superior to their alien counterparts. "Target their engines first," Ward ordered her weapons officers. "We want to disable them, not destroy them. Intelligence needs prisoners for interrogation." The human ships moved with precision that surprised their alien opponents. The Kethrans had assumed that humanity's younger civilization would be inferior in space combat, but 3 years of warfare had taught humans to fight with desperate efficiency. More importantly, they were now using weapons and tactics that the aliens had never encountered. The battle around Jupiter's moons showcased human adaptability at its finest. When Kethran reinforcements arrived expecting to find their main fleet victorious, they instead encountered human ships that had been waiting in ambush positions for hours. The carefully planned Kethran attack had become a slaughter as human forces struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Dr. Morgan monitored the technology warfare from her laboratory. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the modifications she had made to the shared technology were performing better than expected. Every Kethran ship was experiencing cascading system failures as their own computers turned against them. "The navigation systems are feeding them false positional data," she reported to Admiral Stone. "Their weapons are targeting their own ships in 17% of firing solutions. Their communications are being intercepted and decoded in real time." Stone nodded grimly as he watched the tactical display. The Kethran fleet was being systematically destroyed, but he took no pleasure in the slaughter. This was about survival, not revenge. Every alien ship that escaped would report back to the Kethran Empire about human capabilities. Focus on capturing their command vessels, he ordered. We need their navigational data and intelligence files. This war won't end with just defending Earth. The boarding actions that followed were brutal and efficient. Human Marines, equipped with captured Kethran weapons and armor, stormed the crippled alien vessels. The Kethrans fought desperately, but they were facing an enemy that had studied their tactics for years and knew exactly how to counter them. Lieutenant Ross led her squad through the corridors of a damaged Kethran cruiser, her stolen alien weapon humming with deadly energy. The ship's artificial gravity was failing, causing debris to float randomly through the air. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls as her team moved toward the command center. "Contact front," called one of her Marines as Kethran. Warriors emerged from the side passage. The firefight was brief but intense, with energy bolts lighting up the narrow corridor. The aliens fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by humans using their own weapons against them. The capture of the Kethran command ship Destroyer of Worlds provided humanity with intelligence that would change the course of the war. The vessel's computer systems contained detailed maps of the Kethran Empire, military strength assessments, and most importantly, the locations of their major industrial and military installations. Admiral Stone studied the captured data with growing excitement. The Kethrans had concentrated their forces around Earth so completely that their home systems were now vulnerable. The trap that was supposed to destroy humanity had left the alien empire defenseless. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," Stone ordered. "We're taking this war to their doorstep." The human counterattack that followed was swift and merciless. Ships that had been hidden throughout the solar system emerged from concealment and formed into battle groups. The same technology that the Kethrans had provided during the peace negotiations now powered the vessels that would carry the war to alien space. As the last Kethran ships fled Earth's solar system, the aliens finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. They had assumed that humanity's desire for peace meant they were weak and naive. Instead, they had discovered that humans were most dangerous when they appeared to be at their most vulnerable. The peace treaty that was supposed to ensure humanity's destruction had become the instrument of Kethran defeat. Every clause that had been designed to weaken Earth's defenses had been turned into a weapon. Every concession that had seemed like surrender had been part of a larger plan for victory. Supreme Commander Thek, now a prisoner aboard Admiral Stone's flagship, stared at the tactical display showing human fleets jumping toward Kethran space. The roles had completely reversed. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The species that had seemed desperate enough to accept any peace deal had revealed themselves as the most cunning and dangerous opponents the Kethran Empire had ever faced. The solution came from an unexpected source. A group of Kethran philosophers and civilian leaders, freed from the warrior caste suppression, proposed a new form of government based on cooperation rather than domination. They had studied human history and were fascinated by concepts like democracy and federation. "We have learned from our mistakes," explained philosopher Keck during a gathering of species representatives on the neutral world of Haven. "The warrior way brought only death and suffering. Perhaps it is time for the thinking way." The Haven Accords, signed exactly 1 year after the Battle of Earth, established the Galactic Cooperation Council. Unlike the old empire, this new organization was based on voluntary membership and mutual benefit. Each species retained sovereignty over their homeworlds while contributing to collective defense and trade networks. Stone found himself elected as the first chairman of the council, a position he accepted reluctantly. He had wanted to return to Earth and retire from military service, but the other species insisted that humanity lead the transition. The species that had turned a peace treaty into a weapon was trusted to use that same cunning for construction rather than destruction. "We're not perfect," Stone admitted during his acceptance speech. "Humans have made plenty of mistakes throughout our history, but we've also learned from them. We know what it's like to fight for survival, and we know the value of peace when it's truly earned. The transformation of the galaxy took years, but the results were extraordinary. Trade routes that had been closed for decades reopened. Scientific expeditions explored regions that had been forbidden under the old empire. Art, culture, and knowledge flowed freely between species that had once been enemies. The Kethran military was disbanded, but many former warriors found new purpose as peacekeepers and exploration teams. Their natural strength and discipline made them excellent at protecting colonies and investigating dangerous phenomena. The same skills that had made them feared conquerors now made them valued protectors. Deck himself was eventually released from prison and became an advisor to the Council on former Kethran territories. His understanding of the old empire's structure proved invaluable in dismantling its more oppressive systems. He never fully forgave himself for the wars he had started, but he found some peace in helping to build something better. Humanity showed us mercy when they could have shown us extinction, he said during a council session years later. They defeated us completely, yet chose to lift us up rather than crush us down. This is a strength we never understood. The peace that emerged from the war was not the false peace of the treaty that had started it all. This was a peace built on mutual respect, shared prosperity, and the understanding that all species were stronger together than apart. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to build. Children of different species now learned together in schools that taught cooperation alongside competition. Scientists worked on projects that benefited entire sectors rather than just their own worlds. Military forces trained together to face external threats that might emerge from unexplored regions of space. The trap that the Kethrans had set for humanity had indeed changed the galaxy, but not in the way they had intended. Instead of destroying a young species, they had helped create a new form of civilization. The humans who had turned their peace treaty into a weapon had used that same cleverness to forge a lasting peace. As Stone looked out from his office window at the mixed fleet of ships protecting Haven Station, he reflected on the strange turns that history could take. The war that had seemed like humanity's darkest hour had become the foundation for their greatest achievement. The species that had nearly been exterminated had become the guardians of galactic peace. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again, but more importantly, humanity had learned not to underestimate itself. They had proven that intelligence, determination, and the willingness to take calculated risks could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The trap had been turned, the war had been won, and the peace that followed was stronger than any treaty ever signed. War Room beneath Geneva buzzed with activity as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Earth, and human forces were now deep in Kethran space, striking at targets that had been considered completely secure just months earlier. Admiral Stone stood before a massive holographic display showing the positions of human fleets as they systematically dismantled the alien empire's military infrastructure. "The Kethran homeworld is under siege," reported Captain Ward from the communications station. "Their orbital defenses have been neutralized, and ground forces are requesting terms for surrender." Stone nodded, but his expression remained grim. Victory had come at a terrible price, and the hardest part was still ahead. The galaxy was watching humanity's actions, and how they handled their triumph would determine whether they would be seen as liberators or conquerors. In the detention facility aboard the human flagship Defiance, Supreme Commander Thek sat in his cell, staring at the metal walls that had become his world. The proud Kethran warrior, who had once commanded fleets across the galaxy, was now a prisoner of the species he had tried to destroy. His compound eyes tracked the movement of human guards outside his cell, noting their confidence and discipline. The door opened, and Admiral Stone entered alone. The human leader looked older than he had during the peace negotiations, his face marked by the stress of commanding a galactic war. He sat down across from Thek, his movements careful and deliberate. "You knew," Thek said, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into flat English. "From the beginning, you knew our treaty was a deception." Stone leaned back in his chair, studying the alien commander. Your people made a critical error. You assume that because we're younger, we're naive. You thought we'd be so desperate for peace that we'd ignore obvious lies. How? Vic's mandibles clicked in frustration. Our intelligence network showed no signs of human preparation. Your people appeared to be following our instructions exactly. They were following your instructions, Stone replied. But we've been setting traps for each other on Earth for thousands of years. We know how to recognize them, and more importantly, we know how to turn them around. The Admiral pulled out a tablet and showed Vec the current tactical situation. Human fleets were advancing on multiple fronts, using the same Kethran technology that had been shared during the peace negotiations. The aliens' own weapons were being used to destroy their empire. Your treaty gave us everything we needed, Stone continued. Detailed specifications for your technology, the locations of your hidden bases, and most importantly, the exact positions where you plan to mass your forces for the final attack. Vex stared at the display in growing horror. The trap his people had set for humanity had become their own destruction. Every advantage they thought they possessed had been turned against them through careful planning and superior tactics. What happens now? Vex asked quietly. Stone stood up, his expression softening slightly. That depends on your people. This war began because your empire believed that might makes right. You attacked peaceful human colonies and tried to exterminate an entire species, but we're not you. The rehabilitation of captured Kethran worlds was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Human administrators were working with local populations to establish new governments that represented all species, not just the warrior castes that had dominated the old empire. The transition was not without problems, but it was happening peacefully in most sectors. On the former Kethran capital world of Kethros Prime, Ambassador Lee walked through the streets of the capital city, observing the changes taking place. The massive statues of war leaders that had dominated the city squares were being replaced with monuments to peace and cooperation. Kethran civilians who had lived under military rule for generations were slowly adapting to concepts like democracy and individual rights. The integration process is ahead of schedule, Lee reported to Earth during her daily briefing. The civilian population is responding well to the new system. Many of them were just as tired of the constant warfare as we were. The transformation was not limited to political structures. Human scientists were working with Kethran researchers to develop new technologies that could benefit all species. The weapons technology that had been shared during the peace negotiations was being converted into tools for construction and exploration. Dr. Morgan stood in her laboratory, now expanded to include Kethran scientists who had defected during the war. The collaboration between human and alien minds was producing breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. The same energy weapons that had been used to destroy fleets were now being adapted to power terraforming equipment. The irony is perfect, she explained to her mixed team of researchers. The technology they tried to use against us is now helping us build a better galaxy for everyone. The news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy, carried by merchant ships and communication networks that had been suppressed during the war. Species that had been conquered or threatened by the Kethran Empire began to emerge from hiding, eager to establish contact with the humans who had defeated their oppressors. General Rivers oversaw the establishment of new defense networks throughout former Kethran space. The installations were designed not for conquest but for protection, creating safe zones where different species could trade and cooperate without fear of military interference. We're not building an empire, he reminded his staff during a planning session. We're building a community. Every species gets a voice, every world gets protection, and every individual gets the right to determine their own future. The challenges were enormous. Different species had different needs, different cultures, and different concepts of justice. Some former Kethran colonies wanted complete independence, while others preferred to remain part of a larger federation. Humans found themselves in the unexpected role of mediators and peacekeepers. But the alternative to cooperation was a return to the chaos that had existed before. The Kethran Empire had maintained order through fear and oppression, but they had also prevented the smaller conflicts that might have erupted without their presence. Humanity had to find a way to maintain peace without becoming the very thing they had fought to destroy.